Palki Sharma. The big debate is done. Donald Trump versus Kamala Harris. What did they talk about? Who won the debate? How did America and the internet react? Why is so much of the political discourse focused on pets? And will the winner of this debate win the election too? We'll discuss all of this and more. On the other side of the world, scores of countries have come together to prepare a blueprint on the use of artificial intelligence in military operations. We'll tell you what it says. In India, they're set to welcome Mohammad Muizzu, the president of the Maldives. Is this a reset in ties? We'll tell you what's cooking. In Kashmir, a terror-accused member of parliament will campaign for the election. In Kenya, a court suspends a deal for Adani to upgrade their airport. In China, the not-so-curious case of billionaires who go missing or end up in jail. In Nigeria, animals from a zoo are out on the streets thanks to floods. And what's with the politics over women's bodies and choices? Let's talk about childless cat ladies. All this and more coming up. The headlines first. The Kremlin wants the United States. Ukraine wants to use American-supplied missiles to strike targets inside Russia. Moscow says it will respond, quote-unquote, appropriately if Washington agrees to Kiev's demand. This comes as Ukraine threatens to snap ties with Iran over its reported missile deliveries to Russia. Mexico becomes the first country to allow voters to elect judges at all levels. Earlier, protesters stormed Mexico's Senate to disrupt the move. The judicial reform has sparked mass demonstrations and diplomatic tensions, but the outgoing president has pushed hard for it, claiming that the current judicial system serves only the elite. Hundreds of workers at Samsung's India plant are on an indefinite strike, demanding better pay and working hours. The strike started on Monday near the southern city of Chennai. India is an important market for the consumer tech giant, while Samsung's output accounts for nearly a quarter of South Korea's GDP. Turkey wants to build a missile and space rocket test site in the Horn of Africa. Ankara has been holding discussions on this with Somalia. Turkey's ballistic missile program requires long-range testing. Somalia's strategic position on Africa's eastern tip is an ideal location for it. Somalia's proximity to the equator also makes it a prime candidate for a space port. And Indonesia halts new hotel construction in Bali amid fears of over-tourism. Tourism rebounded in Bali after the COVID pandemic. Nearly 3 million tourists have visited Bali this year. This has led to fears of the strain it's putting on local infrastructure and environment.
Donald Trump was fired by 81 million people.
They threw him out of a campaign like a dog. We don't even know. Is he our president?
First of all, it's important to remind the former president you're not running against Joe Biden, you're running against me.
And remember this, she is Biden. You know, she's trying to get away from Biden.
Donald Trump versus Kamala Harris, a showdown that everyone was waiting for. Last night's debate was crucial for both candidates, and it did not disappoint. From the start to the finish, it was a fiery debate. Let's bring you the main highlights. Trump and Harris met for the first time at this debate. Yes, this was their first meeting, and here is how it kicked off.
Kamala Harris, let's have a good debate.
You see, have fun.
This was perhaps the only moment when Harris and Trump were civil. As soon as the debate began, both sides came out swinging. The first question was on the economy. Are Americans better off than they were 4 years ago? Harris tried to criticize Trump's record. She highlighted his shortcomings as president. She raised issues like unemployment and tax cuts for billionaires. Trump fired back by bringing up inflation. He said the U.S. economy was in a shambles under Biden and Harris.
Let's talk about what Donald Trump left us. Donald Trump left us the worst unemployment since the Great Depression.
Look, we've had a terrible economy because inflation which is really known as a country buster. It breaks up countries. We have inflation like very few people have ever seen before, probably the worst in our nation's history.
What are the economic policies of both candidates? Trump is promising harsher tariffs on imports and a more protectionist approach. Harris wants to raise taxes on companies and punish them for price gouging. The next issue was immigration, a point where the Biden-Harris administration is vulnerable. But in the debate, Harris managed to evade Trump's criticism. She did not respond to him directly. Instead, she tried to get under his skin. She provoked Trump with personal attacks. And when the moderators raised the issue, Harris said that Trump supporters get bored at his rallies.
And what you will also notice is that people start leaving his rallies early out of exhaustion and boredom.
People don't leave my rallies. We have the biggest rallies, the most incredible rallies in the history of politics.
Crowd sizes have been a sensitive topic for Trump. He clearly appeared rattled when Kamala Harris made that statement. But then Trump tried to recover by highlighting Harris's track record. She was Biden's border czar, but she could not stem the flow of illegal immigrants. Trump said that Biden and Harris have destroyed the country. Some very sharp statements there, but this is the one which stood out.
They're eating the dogs, the people that came in. They're eating the cats. They're eating the pets of the people that live there.
Trump was talking about Springfield, Ohio here. The moderators fact-checked him on the spot. They pointed out that local authorities have dismissed these claims. But Trump was quick to refute that. The candidates debated about gun control as well. Neither of them seems to be in favor of a complete ban.
She has a plan to confiscate everybody's gun.
President Trump,
she
we
has
do
a
have to
plan.
move.
Then this business about taking everyone's guns away. Tim Walz and I are both gun owners. We're not taking anybody's guns away.
The debate around foreign policy was equally intense. The wars in Ukraine and Russia came up. Trump said that Harris had the chance to prevent the war, but she could not. Harris denied this, and she mocked Trump for praising Putin. She said the Russian president, and I'm quoting, the Russian president would eat Trump for lunch.
But just so you understand, they sent her to negotiate peace before this war started. 3 days later, he went in and he started the war because everything they said was weak and stupid.
If Donald Trump were president, Putin would be sitting in Kyiv right now.
Next was West Asia. Again, both candidates sparred in a similar fashion. Trump was critical of Harris's track record on Israel. He said Harris hates Israel. On this topic, Kamala Harris was clearly on the back foot.
What we know is that this war must end. It must end immediately, and the way it will end is we need a ceasefire deal and we need the hostages out.
She wouldn't even meet with Netanyahu when he went to Congress to make a very important speech. She refused to be there because she was at a sorority party of hers. She wanted to go to the sorority party. She hates Israel.
Harris couldn't spell out a plan that would lead to a ceasefire. Trump said that had he been president, he would have prevented the war altogether. But even he did not have a plan on how to get to a ceasefire. Nonetheless, Trump managed to push Harris on the back foot on foreign policy. He raised America's messy exit from Afghanistan. It was ordered by Joe Biden. That exit paved the way for the Taliban's return. Harris and Trump debated on the issue of China as well. Harris accused Donald Trump of selling chips to the Chinese. She said Trump sold America out on China and made American defenses vulnerable. Trump responded by highlighting his track record on trade and the tariffs that he imposed on Chinese goods when he was in office. So these were the major highlights. Who won the debate? Will it change the fortunes of any of these candidates? And will there be a second debate? That's our next story. Now to the big question, who won the debate? Frankly, it's a tough question to answer because how do you judge it? In normal debates, facts and logic matter, but in political debates, well, not so much. There is more focus on charisma, on composure, and on delivering zinger lines. So who scored on those parameters? Most US publications say Kamala Harris. The New York Times, Wall Street Journal, USA Today, CNN, MSNBC, all of them say that Harris outperformed Trump. And what about viewers? Well, CNN did a snap poll of the TV audience. 63% said Harris won. 37% said it was Trump. Even some Trump supporters have admitted this. They say the former president got baited by Harris.
And then Harris baited him into the whole rally situation, which isn't his best topic. If he sticks to the policy of it, I feel like he beats him. But if she baits him into something, he'll just take it and doesn't answer the question.
The betting market also agrees. There was a 7-point increase in Kamala Harris's votes. Plus, Bitcoin dropped 1%. The crypto industry is betting on a Trump victory, but the markets feel he did not perform well. The Trump campaign is also blaming the moderators. They say the debate was biased. Perhaps it was. But the side blaming the moderators is often the losing side. Of course, Trump is putting up a brave face. He is calling it his best ever debate.
All I do is say the truth. I say the truth. If I lose votes or gain votes, I don't care. But this was my best debate. I thought it was very good. I thought she was very weak on foreign policy.
Okay, today was a good day. We got to work tomorrow. And let me just say that I think we all know that tonight was a night that highlights something that you all have been working so hard on. I started the debate by talking about it, and it became apparent, I think, throughout that about an hour and a half.
So overall, not a good look for Trump. The question is, will it hurt his chances? Let's look at the past for clues. In 2016, Donald Trump was running against Hillary Clinton. He lost all the debates, but he won the election. In 2020, he ran against Joe Biden. Again, Biden won the debates, but his victory was a narrow one. So you can't really use debates to predict election results, especially with someone like Trump. His supporters do not like him for his composure or his communication skills. They like him for his volatility. Just think about it. Trump stirred up an attack on the US Capitol, but it made him more popular. Trump got convicted on criminal charges, again made him more popular. So the idea that a debate loss could derail his campaign is far-fetched. Plus, there wasn't a knockout blow. Yes, Harris landed a lot of zingers, but nothing fatal. Nothing that would leave his campaign in tatters, which is why Kamala Harris is pushing for a second debate. She wants to deliver a knockout blow. But Donald Trump is being non-committal. His campaign is sending out mixed signals. On paper, a second debate could help Trump, because now he knows Harris's strategy. Bait him into making needless comments, so next time he can just sidestep the trap. Instead, he can focus on his key messaging: immigration and economy. I guess we'll have to see if Trump agrees to a second debate, which brings us to Kamala Harris. What did we learn about her? Well, this was going to be her biggest challenge, a live debate with Donald Trump. Harris is not exactly a good speaker. She was also under fire for changes in her position, like on fracking and immigration. So the question was, would she be exposed, both for her speaking skills and her flip-flops? As it turned out, she wasn't. Every time Harris was questioned, she deflected it. Instead, she baited Donald Trump. She talked about his crowd sizes or criminal cases. Now, Trump could have ignored her and hammered down on her weaknesses, but Trump, being Trump, did not. He ranted about things that did not really matter. As a result, Harris emerged unscathed. Chances are this performance will improve her poll numbers because Harris is already in the lead. She did not need a slam dunk. She just needed to hold her own. Look at the national polling numbers. Harris is at 47% and Trump is at 44%. It may look like a cakewalk for her, but let's take a closer look at the battleground states, the states that can vote Republican or Democrat, the swing states. There are 7 such swing states. Harris leads Trump in 5 of them. But look at how slender her lead is. In 3 states, it's less than 1%, 1 point, which is within the margin of statistical error. So both sides need every bit of help they can get. And today, Kamala Harris got some help from Taylor Swift. She's finally endorsed Harris. She called her a steady-handed and gifted leader. And look at the picture she posted with it, that of herself with a cat. And look at how she signed off on this post, as a childless cat lady. We've told you about this before. Trump's running mate had blamed so-called childless cat ladies for America's problems. Clearly, Taylor Swift took offense to that. But will her endorsement change anything? Well, as a headline, it is huge. Taylor Swift is probably the most popular musician on the planet today, so her support counts a lot. But at the voting booth, it may not. Taylor's fans are mostly young Americans. Most of them already support Kamala Harris. Nonetheless, it's a great name to have on your side, especially on the day of the debate. We've got 56 days left in the campaign, and the Trump team has got some thinking to do. If they don't change strategy, Harris will keep extending her lead. Now, every election has a defining flashpoint. It could be the economy, it could be healthcare, it could be national security. But for America in 2024, it seems to be pets. From J.D. Vance's quip about childless cat ladies to Donald Trump saying that immigrants are eating the pets. One thing is quite clear, cats and dogs have clawed their way into the political spotlight. And they're dominating the conversation. But why is it happening? Why do pets hold the leash on America's future? Our next report tells you.
It's time for yet another presidential election in America. Kamala Harris versus Donald Trump. And they're clashing over a surprising topic: pets. Forget inflation, healthcare, or foreign policy. This election has gone to the dogs and cats, hamsters, even the ducks. It started with a comment by J.D. Vance. He went on air to say what was truly wrong with America. The answer was simple: childless cat ladies.
We're effectively run in this country via the Democrats, via our corporate oligarchs, by a bunch of childless cat ladies who are miserable at their own lives and the choices that they've made, and so they want to make the rest of the country miserable too.
Of course, the real menace to democracy isn't polarization or misinformation. It's single women and their furballs. So Vance let the cat out of the bag, and the Republican Party seems to have capitalized on it. Like Donald Trump at the presidential debate. Minutes after the start, he starts rambling, talking about immigrants eating pets.
They're eating the dogs, the people that came in. They're eating the cats. They're eating the pets of the people that live there. And this is what's happening in our country, and it's a shame.
What exactly is he talking about? Well, it started with a viral video. It was by a resident in Ohio's Springfield. The resident claimed that immigrants killed ducks from the local park for food. Of course, the Springfield police has dismissed these rumors, but America's right wing pounced upon it. It soon turned into viral memes. There were AI-generated images. Trump was surrounded by ducks, looking to protect them. The Arizona Republican Party went one step further. It put up 12 billboards. It showed 4 kittens wearing cow costumes. The slogan said, "Eat less kittens, vote Republican." Trump's son joined the bandwagon too. He posted multiple AI-generated images. One showed animals watching the debate. The caption said, "We know who they're rooting for tonight." Another image showed Donald Trump atop an orange cat. He has a gun in his hand. He is surrounded by many other cats. That caption read, "Save our pets." So, in Trumpian fashion, the narrative has been spun. Immigrants did not just steal American jobs, they also stole America's pets. Of course, the Democrats haven't taken this seriously, but they have touted their pet accolades, like Tim Walz is talking about his cat. Guess poor politics has now taken over America. US presidents have always been fond of pets. Only 3 American presidents did not have a pet in the White House. Ironically, one of them was Donald Trump. Now he's pitching himself as a messiah of America's pets. But is this just a convenient distraction, or is this a canary in a coal mine? A sign that American politics has truly gone too far with this propaganda.
Artificial intelligence. It's come a long way. AI used to be the ultimate villain in movies, a force wanting to wipe out humanity. But now armies want it as a sidekick. On Tuesday, representatives from several nations met in Seoul for the ReAIM Summit. It stands for Responsible AI in the Military Domain. The first edition took place in Amsterdam last year. Several nations attended. 60 of them endorsed a call to action. But it was just a statement with no legal commitments. This time they've gone one step further. They've endorsed a blueprint to govern the use of AI in militaries. This blueprint has some practical guidelines, but again, it's not legally binding.
One of the most powerful messages emerging from this summit is the importance of collaboration and international cooperation. AI technologies, while holding tremendous potential, also present complex ethical, security, and governance challenges. None of us, ladies and gentlemen, can address these challenges alone.
Now, the blueprint aims to create guardrails, frameworks that monitor the military application of artificial intelligence. But not everyone is buying it. Like China, Beijing sent a representative to the summit, but it did not back the document. Same with India. It did not endorse the call to action in The Hague, and it hasn't said anything about the blueprint in Seoul. So New Delhi is not fully convinced. Clearly, the world is not on the same page on this one, which brings us to some very basic questions like how does it work? How is AI being used in warfare? What are the risks? And is the use of artificial intelligence a blessing or a threat? Let's look at the uses first. Artificial intelligence is not new to warfare. It's already an integral part of it. On one side is the technical stuff, your basic maintenance and logistics. Artificial intelligence helps take care of that. Let me show you this recent study. It looks at A-10C warplanes. AI can predict when they need repair, and that could save America nearly $25 million every month. Then there are the boring tasks like going through files. No human truly enjoys it. So the US Army is delegating it to AI. It has a model that can go through 140,000 personnel files, 140,000 files. It gives them scores for promotion. So AI does help in menial jobs. But what about the battlefield? Well, it's being used there too. From Ukraine to Gaza, AI is already reshaping warfare. We're talking about AI-powered drones, automatic sensors, and even autonomous decision-making tools. Some militaries see it as a plus, and it does have advantages, like faster decision-making, precise targeting, and reduced human risk. That makes AI the new frontier of warfare. But there's a catch too. On paper and in algorithms, it sounds very good. But in a war, it could go either way. Take Lavender, for example. It's an AI-driven system being used by Israel. Lavender has the name of nearly every resident in Gaza. It combines this information with other data to determine if someone is a Hamas militant or not. At one point, it had identified 37,000 targets, 37,000 individuals. The problem is, it has a 10% error rate, which means all of this is supposed to be reviewed by a human too, but you don't often have that luxury in a war. So there's serious collateral damage. Here's one more example. In 2020, a killer drone hunted down and killed soldiers in Libya. They were fleeing fighters. So the AI drone attacked human targets. But no human was consulted for the strike. It acted autonomously. And that makes it quite dangerous. AI can be good at locking targets, but it's often unable to distinguish between a threat and an innocent. And that leaves room for error. In a war, this can be fatal. Also, there's an ethical question here. If the machine makes a mistake, who is responsible? Is it the machine, or the person who designed it, or the army who deployed it? Who do you blame in a scenario like that? Another chilling possibility, the use of AI in nuclear warfare. One wrong move, and millions could be at risk.
AI can pose various risks, such as unintended escalation during conflict, failures resulting from algorithmic or systemic bias, and potentially devastating misalignment with human intent.
So there are a lot of risks, but AI is the future, so countries will have to move with the times. What they need right now is two things. First is human oversight. Sure, AI can predict a target, but it must be reviewed by humans who then take the final call. The second is well-tested AI. Any deployment must be thoroughly reviewed. There's no place for half-baked technology in a war, because on the battlefield, it's the difference between life and death. Now let's look at the Maldives, India's island neighbor in the Indian Ocean. Indo-Maldivian ties have been frosty of late because of the Maldivian president, Mohammad Muizzu. He came to power last November on the back of an anti-India campaign called India Out. But in about 1 year, that platform has proved to be unsustainable. So it looks like Muizzu wants to reset ties. Yesterday, his spokesperson made an announcement. Muizzu is about to visit India. He'll be in New Delhi, and I'm quoting, he'll be here very soon. Apparently, the dates are being finalized. It could be as soon as next week. The visit was not the only thing that was announced yesterday, though. The Maldivian government also said that 2 officials had resigned, 2 deputy ministers in their youth ministry, Malsha Sharif and Mariam Shiuna. Some Indians may be familiar with those names. A few months back, they were trending on social media. These 2 ministers caused an uproar in January this year when they insulted India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi. Modi was on a visit to Lakshadweep. It's an Indian Union territory in the Indian Ocean, located just north of the Maldives. Modi was there to promote the islands as a tourism destination. And the Maldivian ministers did not like that. Perhaps they felt threatened or they were just bitter. Either way, they lashed out and made derogatory remarks against Prime Minister Modi. Their actions set off a storm. A campaign began in India to boycott the Maldives as a holiday destination. This move was extremely effective because the Maldives depends on its tourism industry, and India was the largest source of tourists at the time. The boycott campaign had an immediate effect. The 2 ministers I mentioned, Malsha Sharif and Mariam Shiuna, were suspended immediately, along with the 3rd deputy minister, Abdullah Mazoom Majid. Now Shiuna and Malsha have been sacked. They say they resigned for personal reasons, but the timing is certainly interesting. It comes just days ahead of Muizzu's trip to India, which is quite the coincidence. The 3rd offender, Abdullah Mazoom Majid, is reportedly still around. Let's see how long that lasts. But this can be viewed as a small victory for India. So how did New Delhi pull this off? How come Muizzu is visiting India and sacking his problematic ministers to boot? Well, it did not happen overnight. New Delhi seems to have been playing the long game here, working behind the scenes to normalize ties with Mali. Let's look at the events of this week. Yesterday, India welcomed this man, the Maldivian Minister of Construction and Infrastructure, for a meeting about the ongoing Tila-Male Bridge project. It's worth about $500 million. And all that money has come from India, $500 million, in the form of credit and a grant. The Tila-Male Bridge is one of the biggest connectivity projects in the Maldives. It's about halfway done. It's expected to be finished by 2026. India made sure to keep this project going despite animosity and abuse from the Maldives. And this professionalism seems to have paid off. Perhaps it knocked some sense into Mali, reminding them who their true friends and trusted partners really are. And speaking of partners, another event took place this week. The 5th Maldives-India Defence Cooperation Dialogue. Both countries agreed to strengthen defence ties and enhance cooperation. This is a far cry from Muizzu's initial tone. He came to power promising to expel Indian troops from the Maldives, troops who were just there to help with search and rescue operations. He actually did expel them in the month of May. But what next? Perhaps Muizzu realized that his India out plan was not sustainable. Or perhaps India's diplomatic outreach finally showed him the light. He went on to attend Prime Minister Modi's swearing-in ceremony in June this year, and now he's about to come for his first official visit. It is a turnaround in ties, which may or may not be more than what he deserves. But New Delhi always tries to get along with its neighbors, so this seems like an extension of India's neighborhood-first policy.
By the people that went there.
Again, the Springfield city manager says there's no evidence of that. Vice
We'll
President
find
Harris,
out.
I'll let you respond to the rest of what you've heard.
You talk about extreme. This is, I think, one of the reasons why in this election I actually have the endorsement of 200 Republicans who have formally worked with President Bush, Mitt Romney, and John McCain, including the endorsement of former Vice President Dick Cheney and Congress member Liz Cheney. And if you want to really know the inside track on who the former president is, if he didn't make it clear already, just ask people who have worked with him. His former chief of staff, a four-star general, has said he has contempt for the Constitution of the United States. His former national security advisor has said he is dangerous and unfit. His former Secretary of Defense has said the nation, the Republic, would never survive another Trump term. And when we listen to this kind of rhetoric, when the issues that affect the American people are not being addressed, I think the choice is clear in this election.
President Trump, I'll give you a quick minute to respond here.
Thank you, because when I hear that, see, I'm a different kind of a person. I fired most of those people. Not so graciously. They did bad things or a bad job. I fired them. They never fired one person. They didn't fire anybody having to do with Afghanistan and the Taliban and the 13 people whose were just killed, viciously and violently killed. And I got to know the parents and the family. They didn't fire. They should have fired all.
I will not let down my people. I take a pledge that I will fight Modi's narrative of Naya Kashmir.
आज उनको छोड़ा गया ताकि वोटों का डिवीजन हो जाए, वोट कटौती हो जाए।
We are days away from elections in Jammu and Kashmir, the first in nearly 10 years. It's also the first since Article 370 was removed, the law that gave Kashmir its special status. So the stakes could not be higher. The campaigning is on in full swing, and pretty soon a new face will hit the campaign trail. Sheikh Abdul Rashid, aka Engineer Rashid. He leads the Awami Ittihad Party, or the AIP, in Kashmir. Speculation is that they could spring a surprise. The AIP is focusing mostly on Kashmir. Out of the 47 seats there, they're planning to contest 40 or 42. In Jammu, they're only fielding 5 to 8 candidates. And their biggest challenge? Their leader is in jail. That's right, Engineer Rashid was arrested in 2019. The National Investigation Agency, or the NIA, has accused him of terror funding. But this year, Rashid sprung a surprise. He won a Lok Sabha seat from jail, that too by defeating former Chief Minister Omar Abdullah. This time, though, he won't be in jail. A special court in Delhi has granted interim bail to him. Engineer Rashid has been released until October 2nd. That's a day after voting ends in Jammu and Kashmir. The regional parties are not happy about it. They're questioning the timing. Omar Abdullah says the bail is political, that the BJP will try to form a government with Rashid's party. The PDP went a step ahead. They're calling Rashid a proxy of the BJP, a tool to divide the vote in Kashmir. Of course, the BJP has denied all of this. They say Rashid's bail is a decision of the court, not a political call. Rashid himself says he plans to fight the BJP.
I will not let down my people. I take a pledge that I will fight Modi's narrative of Naya Kashmir, which has miserably failed in Jammu and Kashmir. People have rejected his narrative, and people of J&K have rejected whatsoever he did on 5th August 2019. The vote to me was a referendum against Modi's policy, especially abrogation of Article 370 and 35A.
Nonetheless, it's a massive change for fortunes for Rashid. He was jailed 4 days after Article 370 was removed, the article that granted a special status to Jammu and Kashmir. It was scrapped in August 2019. Days later, Rashid was jailed, and since then, the government has consistently opposed his bail pleas. And you can see why. His charges tied him up to Hafiz Saeed, the mastermind of 2611. He was accused of separatism and terror funding. Yet now he's in the mainstream. Not only is he leading a major political campaign, he could emerge as a kingmaker. But forget Rashid's participation. Even otherwise, this election is historic. It is delivering democracy back to Jammu and Kashmir. It's also a big test for New Delhi, a test to see if the Article 370 bet has paid off. The Election Commission is working hard to boost public participation. Reports say they have given instructions to local officials. Don't arrest party workers or leaders without proper cause. Don't shift or merge polling booths, and don't cancel rallies at the last minute. All of this used to be routine in Jammu and Kashmir, but the poll body says not anymore. The idea is to build trust in the election process. The border forces are also on alert. That's the BSF, the Border Security Force. They have put counter-infiltration measures in place. The goal is to ensure that there are no disruptions, especially from the other side. You see, these polls are mainly about two things. One is obviously security, to ensure free, fair and safe elections. Even today we saw a gunfight. Terrorists opened fire at security forces in Udhampur. The challenge is to contain that, especially during voting. The second challenge is to decide Jammu and Kashmir's political future. And that's what this election is about. We've got a diverse field of candidates, national parties, regional parties, separatists, and a record number of independents. In the first two phases, 44% of the candidates are independents. Some of them are linked to Engineer Rashid's party. Some are leaders who've parted ways with established parties. Either way, it is a diverse field. And from this, Jammu and Kashmir's new leadership will emerge, one that must decide the post-370 future. The first phase of voting is next Wednesday. Prime Minister Modi is slated to visit Jammu this weekend. We'll be tracking all those updates for you. Meanwhile, in Kenya, a fresh wave of protests has erupted at Nairobi's main international airport, where workers went on strike today. They're opposing a deal between the government of Kenya and the Adani Group. It is one of India's largest business conglomerates. Adani secured an agreement to build and run this airport. But the deal is now mired in controversy. The workers are opposed to Adani's involvement. Legal scrutiny is intensifying, and earlier this week, a Kenyan court suspended the agreement. Our next report brings you the details.
At Kenya's main international airport, passengers were in for a shock today. Planes were grounded, flights were running late, and this left many of the travelers stranded.
From 3:30, we've been sitting down there waiting. Nobody is coming out to tell us anything, to inform us anything. Either we should go, leave, look for a hotel or something. I have a little child here waiting hungrily. No one comes there. This is not good at all.
Our flight was at 6:45 a.m. We came here at 4 a.m. We've been waiting for 6 hours. I was literally sitting there just doing nothing, bored. And yeah, it's very poor.
The strike by airport workers brought the Jomo airport to a standstill. The workers' union is opposing a deal with India's Adani Group. The deal was struck by the Kenyan government in July. This airport is Kenya's largest one, but its infrastructure urgently needs an upgrade. So Nairobi gave the Adani Group a contract in July. It was a lease agreement for 30 years. Adani would refurbish the facility and invest in a new terminal and runway. In exchange, Adani would get the rights to operate the airport. Overall, the deal is worth close to $2 billion to Kenya. But the Union of Airport Workers remains opposed to this plan. It is wary of a private company running the airport. The workers fear job losses and inferior employment terms. Kenya's government has been defending this deal. It calls it a necessity to upgrade the airport. But Kenya's High Court thinks differently. Earlier this week, it blocked the deal. The agreement will now undergo a judicial review. The petition against it has been filed by two parties, the Law Society of Kenya and the Kenya Human Rights Commission. They argue that the money needed for the airport's upgrade can be raised independently and there is no need to lease the facility out. Kenya has faced significant unrest throughout the year. Much of it was driven by the government's economic policies. The country is grappling with inflation and high unemployment. Earlier this year, large-scale protests broke out. The government proposed raising taxes on essentials like oil and bread. The funds were meant to help pay off $80 billion in debt. However, the plan faced a major backlash. President William Ruto was forced to withdraw it. He is yet to find a solution to Kenya's economic problems. The Kenyans are growing increasingly impatient, and their anger shows no signs of easing.
Our next story comes from China. It's about their billionaires, the entrepreneurs who helped fuel the country's growth. China proudly claims to be a communist country, but the ground reality is quite different. Here is a report by the state mouthpiece, citing the 50, 60, 70, 80 combination. China's private sector apparently provides 50% of the country's tax revenue, 60% of its GDP, 70% of its technological innovation, and 80% of its urban employment. The private sector does all of this, and this is acknowledged by the Chinese government. So China is a communist country with a capitalist C. Beijing understands that its entrepreneurs are a flock of golden geese. They're the ones who propel the country's economic growth. The 50, 60, 70, 80 formula proves it. So then why is China so keen to cook these geese? Here's a report from this week about a boutique investment firm called Renaissance Holdings. The company has crumbled. This week, its share prices collapsed by up to 73% at one point. That was the collapse, 73%. Finally, it ended up losing 2/3 of its value. Now, Renaissance was one of China's biggest investment banks. It once brokered mega mergers and stellar IPOs. So then why did it tank? Well, because Beijing got involved. Last February, the Chinese government picked up the company's founder, Bao Fan. He went missing for a few days. It was later revealed that he was under investigation. When this happened, his company's shares were frozen. They could not be traded. Bao Fan resigned this February, about a year after his abduction. Renaissance has spent months trying to get its finances in order, and they only published their statement last week, the financial results for 2022 and 2023. That's when China allowed it to resume trading. And that is why the shares crashed on Monday. Will Beijing mind the collapse? Probably not, because it already took its cut. Last year, the company was forced to make a payment of about $11 million. Why? Because the Chinese authorities said so. That's it, $11 million. Beijing butchered the firm and kept a small cut for itself. And this story has become all too familiar in China. Let's look at another case, the story of Sun Dawu, a 70-year-old billionaire who made his fortune in pig farming. He has been in jail since 2021. He was convicted on charges of picking quarrels, inciting crowds to attack state agencies, and unlawful occupation of agricultural land. Picking quarrels with whom? The Chinese Communist Party. Sun was quite vocal in his criticism, and he initially managed to survive despite this. He was out and about for years through various regimes. But then came China's great golden goose slayer, Xi Jinping, and now Sun is among the geese who've been cooked. His case is all too common. Any Chinese billionaire who speaks up gets arrested and imprisoned. Some of them just disappear for a while and come back as shadows of their former selves. Look at Jack Ma, the founder of the Alibaba Group, perhaps China's most famous entrepreneur. In October 2020, Jack Ma criticized China's financial system, and soon after that, he went missing. He turned up only 3 months later. Jack Ma's Alibaba Group was fined. It had to pay $2.8 billion to the government. Profile since, which makes sense. He's actually one of the lucky ones. He isn't rotting in jail. Sun Dawu is serving an 18-year sentence. He's 70 years old, 18-year sentence. The authorities basically want him to die in a dungeon. It's the same case with Ren Zhixiang, a former real estate tycoon. Ren criticized China's handling of the Wuhan virus pandemic. He was suddenly found guilty of corruption and sentenced to 18 years in prison. The same sentence was handed to Wu Xiaohui, the former chairman of an insurance group, 18 years in prison, apparently for embezzlement. All these golden geese who became famous or who criticized the government, they all end up missing or in prison. What does this tell you? Whenever a Chinese entrepreneur makes it big, they become a target. No matter how important China's private sector is, it is always going to be a scapegoat. Beijing likes to pretend that it is business friendly. But there's a reason why foreign companies are looking to get out. They know that doing business in China is risky. If China's homegrown businesses are not safe, what hope do foreign ones have? Beijing claims it's a crackdown on corruption. But what it looks like is a crackdown on dissent. Anyone who's vocal, anyone popular enough to have reach, Xi Jinping has them removed. And he confiscates their wealth while he's at it. This is not restricted to the oligarchs, though. You have actors who go missing, tennis players, and of course the occasional foreign minister. Some of them eventually turn up again, but as hollow shells. So is everyone on the list really corrupt, or did they just happen to upset China's modern emperor? Between justice and Xi's ego, we all know what will ultimately prevail. Our next story is from Nigeria, where a lion was spotted running through the streets and an ostrich was seen strolling casually. We're not making this up. A dam has collapsed in northeastern Nigeria. It has unleashed severe flooding in the region, the worst flooding in 3 decades. Many people have been forced to flee their homes. A zoo has been inundated, so wild animals have escaped from the facility and they're roaming on the streets. Here is a report.
This is Nigeria, a country in West Africa where it is raining wild animals, from lions and crocodiles to ostriches. Unusually heavy rains have been battering northeastern Nigeria for weeks now. On Tuesday, the Alu Dam in the state of Borno overflowed and finally it collapsed, causing severe flooding in the region. This is the state's worst flooding in 30 years. 3 decades ago as well, the rains brought down the same dam.
The floodwaters came and we tried to push them back, but they overpowered us. We then left our homes and we made our way to this camp. But now, our problem is we don't have anything, not even food.
The water flooded our house. My room is completely flooded, and the only thing I'm left with is the clothes I'm currently wearing. My daughter has been hospitalized.
While residents are rushing to hospitals seeking treatment and refuge, the very same hospitals are majorly affected. So are schools, which have been shut for the next 2 weeks. Thousands of residents are fleeing from their homes. Local authorities have issued an alert. President Bola Tinubu has called for an immediate evacuation of residents. Vice President Kashim Shettima was seen braving the floodwaters. But amid this deluge, the government has another crisis on their hands: wild animals. The floods hit a major zoo in the region, the Borno State Museum Park. Many facilities are underwater, walls have collapsed, and 80% of the animals have been killed. Most of them, including lions and hyenas, were still in their cages when the flood hit. They were completely submerged. But the remaining animals managed to escape. This includes ostriches, at least 1 lion, crocodiles, snakes, and hippos. Videos of these creatures on the streets are going viral in Nigeria. So far, the zoo manager has only stated the obvious. He says, some deadly animals have been washed away into our communities. No deaths or animal attacks have been reported, but residents have been advised to be careful. This is only the latest disaster in a series of floods that have hit Nigeria recently. Since the beginning of August, 170 people have died in floods across the country and more than 200,000 have been displaced. Nigeria is prone to floods, but this year the flooding has been reported in areas where it was previously rare. Mostly, this is thanks to climate change. Flooding during the monsoons has now become the norm in Nigeria, and the government has few solutions, leaving both people and animals to fend for themselves.
The US presidential election. It's a vast and complicated affair, but often one topic or issue stands out. In 2016, it was immigration. In 2020, it was the pandemic. And in 2024, it's suddenly about having children. Take last night's showdown. A number of topics were on the table: economy, foreign policy, immigration, gun control. We told you all about it. But another hot button issue was part of this list, and that's abortion. Kamala Harris gave a forceful defense of abortion rights. She talked about the dire medical situation. She gave searing details and blamed it all on Donald Trump. Meanwhile, Trump accused her of lying. He said that he believes in exceptions for rape, incest, and to save the life of the mother. He also claimed to be a leader on IVF. And so it went back and forth. But amid the blame game, one remark stood out when Harris said the government and Donald Trump certainly should not be telling a woman what to do with her body. But from youth to old age, a woman's body is not seen as her own. It is viewed as something to comment on, to regulate, and this extends to women's choice or ability to have children. Giving birth is seen as a woman's duty. It is a playing ground for critique. Is she having children? Why not? If yes, then when? How many? Hopefully soon, but not too soon. Everything is a matter of public opinion. So what is personal often becomes public and political. In the moments after the debate wrapped, pop icon Taylor Swift weighed in. She endorsed Kamala Harris in an Instagram post. She signed it off as childless cat lady. That's her way of owning the infamous jibe by Trump's running mate J.D. Vance. But soon after, this happened. Trump's supporter Elon Musk took to Twitter and he responded to Swift with an offer of insemination. He said, and I quote, "Fine, Taylor, you win. I will give you a child and guard your cats with my life." That has got to be a skill, being both crass and condescending at the same time. Now, Musk has fathered 12 known children. He's in a custody battle with a former girlfriend, over 3 of them. He had another 3 children with one of his employees. He has promoted unfounded panic over population collapse. He has spread population conspiracy theories and said things like, "I'm doing my part, ha ha." Maybe he wants to populate the entire planet himself, and looking at the trajectory, he's doing a fantastic job. Ha ha indeed. But does this or anything give Musk or Vance, or Trump for that matter, the right to demand children from others? What is this? Some cult fertility clinic? The fact is, they talk about children when it suits them, when it suits their political needs. Earlier, Donald Trump indicated that he would support a national abortion ban. When Harris brought it up last night, he accused her of lying. And don't get us wrong, this is not a Republican issue. Take President Joe Biden, for example. He is an 81-year-old Catholic. He long opposed abortion. He was never comfortable talking about it. Yet when it came to policies and debates, he would give bumbling remarks in favor because it is important to the Democrats. And this is not just a US issue either. This year, France made abortion a constitutional right. They didn't have to. But they did it so that President Emmanuel Macron could curry favor. Another example is Poland. They outlawed abortion 4 years ago when the right wing was in power. And now they have a new prime minister. He wants to overturn it. So it doesn't matter which country it is, childbirth is a political battleground and women's bodies are the collateral damage, to the point that personal choices are seen as a political reflection. Take the UK, for example. In 2016, Theresa May was vying to be the Prime Minister. She does not have children. And her opponent made it a point to highlight this. She said, being a mum means you have a real stake in the future of our country, a tangible stake. 10 on 10 logic. And quite unfortunate, if I may add. The world over, women are expected to have children. If they don't live up to this expectation, they're called names: childless cat lady, crone, old maid. At the same time, the stigma is entirely a woman's burden. Men are completely left out of the equation. So it is a woman's responsibility to have children, to take care of them, to raise them, and to handle most of the unpaid labor. But men, they just have to talk about motherhood. Apparently that is enough. Because God forbid we stop judging women for choices that are theirs to make and actually focus on policies that can help people who want to be parents.
All those top people, because that was one of the most incompetently handled situations anybody has ever seen. So when somebody does a bad job, I fire him. And you take a guy like Esper, he was no good, I fired him, so he writes a book. Another one writes a book, because with me they can write books, with nobody else can they. But they have done such a poor job, and they never fire anybody. Look at the economy. Look at the inflation. They didn't fire any of their economists. They have the same people. That's a good way not to have books written about you. But just to finish, I got more votes than any Republican in history by far. In fact, I got more votes than any president, sitting president, in history by far.
Let me continue on immigration. It was what you wanted to talk about earlier, so let's get back to your deportation proposal that the vice president has reacted to as well. President Trump, you call this the largest domestic deportation operation in the history of our country. You say you would use the National Guard. You say if things get out of control, you'd have no problem using the U.S. military.
Police, yes.
You also said you would use local police. How would you deport 11 million undocumented immigrants? I know you believe that number is much higher. Take us through this. What does this look like? Will authorities be going door to door in this country?
Yeah, it is much higher because of them. They allowed criminals, many millions of criminals. They allowed terrorists. They allowed common street criminals. They allowed people to come in.
And now it's time for Vantage Shots, images that tell the story. Russia holds its biggest post-Soviet naval drills along with China. Pope Francis gets a grand welcome in Singapore, the last stop of his Asia-Pacific tour. And the Australian police arrest 33 people amid anti-Gaza war protests in Melbourne. Finally, we're taking you back in history. On this day in 2001, nearly 3,000 people were killed after 4 planes were hijacked by Al-Qaeda terrorists. 2 planes flew into the World Trade Center's Twin Towers in New York. The Twin Towers collapsed after a short while. Another plane crashed into the Pentagon. The attacks triggered America's global war on terror, including wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. We're leaving you on that note. Thank you for watching. We'll see you tomorrow.